Good morning, and thank you for joining us yet again for The House at Pooh Corner, this 8th chapter in which Piglet does a very grand thing. Halfway between Pooh's house and Piglet's house was a thoughtful spot where they met sometimes when they had decided to go and see each other. And as it was warm and out of the wind, they would sit down there for a little and wonder what they would do now that they had seen each other. Well, one day, when they had decided not to do anything, Pooh made up a verse about it, so that everybody should know what the place was for. This warm and sunny spot belongs to Pooh, and here he wonders what he's going to do. Oh, bother, I forgot. It's Piglet's too. Now, one autumn morning, when the wind had blown all the leaves off the trees in the night, and was trying to blow the branches off, Pooh and Piglet were sitting in the thoughtful spot and wondering. Well, what I think, said Pooh, is I think we will go to Pooh Corner and see Eeyore, because perhaps his house has blown down, and perhaps he would like us to build it again. Well, what I think, said Piglet, is I think that we will go and see Christopher Robin, only he won't be there, so we can't. Well, let's go and see everybody, said Pooh, because when you've been walking in the wind for miles, and you suddenly go into somebody's house, and he says, "Hello, Pooh, you are just in time for a little smackerel of something," and you are, then it's what I call a friendly day. So Piglet thought that they ought to have a reason for going to see everybody, like looking for Small or organizing an expedition, if Pooh could think of something. And Pooh could. We will go because it's Thursday, he said. And we will go to wish everybody a very happy Thursday. Come on, Piglet. And they got up. And when Piglet had sat down again, because he didn't know the wind was so strong, and had been helped up again by Pooh, they started off. They went to Pooh's house first, and luckily, Pooh was at home just as they got there. And so he asked them in, and they had some. And then they went on to Kanga's house, holding on to each other and shouting, "Isn't it?" and "What?" and "I can't hear." By the time they got to Kanga's house, they were so buffeted that they just stayed to lunch. Just at first, it seemed rather cold outside afterwards, so they pushed on to Rabbit's as quickly as they could. "We have come to wish you a very happy Thursday," said Pooh, when he'd gone in and out once or twice just to make sure that he could get out again. "Why? What's going to happen on Thursday?" asked Rabbit. And when Pooh had explained, and Rabbit, whose life was made up of very important things, said, "Oh, well, I thought you had really come about something." They sat down for a little, and by, Pooh and Piglet went on again. And the wind was behind them now, so they didn't have to shout. "Rabbit is clever," said Pooh thoughtfully. "Yes," said Piglet, "Rabbit is clever. And he has brain." "Yes," said Piglet, "Rabbit has brain." There was a long silence. "I suppose," said Pooh, "that's why he never understands anything." Christopher Robin was at home by this time, because it was the afternoon, and he was so glad to see them that they stayed there until very nearly tea time. And then they had a very nearly tea, which is the one you forget about afterwards. And they hurried on to Pooh Corner, so as to see Eeyore before it was too late to have a proper tea with Owl. "Hello, Eeyore," they called out cheerfully. "Ah," said Eeyore. "Lost your way?" "Well, we just came to see you," said Piglet. "And to see how your house was. Oh, look, Pooh, it's still standing." "I know," said Eeyore. "Very odd. Somebody ought to have come down and pushed it over." "Well, no, we wondered whether the wind would blow it down," said Pooh. "Ah, that is why no one has bothered, I suppose. I mean, I thought they had forgotten. Well, we're very glad to see you, Eeyore. And now we are going on to see Owl." "That's right. You will like Owl. He flew past a day or two ago and noticed me. He didn't actually say anything, mind you, but he knew it was me. Very friendly of him, I thought. Encouraging." Pooh and Piglet shuffled about a little and said, "Well, goodbye, Eeyore," as lingeringly as they could. But they had a long way to go, and they wanted to be getting on. "Goodbye," said Eeyore. "Mind you don't get blown away, little Piglet. You'll be missed. People would say, 'Where's little Piglet been blown to?' really wanting to know. Well, goodbye. And thank you for happening to pass me." "Goodbye," said Pooh and Piglet for the last time, and they pushed on to Owl's house, and the wind was against them now, and Piglet's ears streamed behind them like banners. As he fought his way along. And it seemed hours before he got them to the shelter of the 100-acre wood, where they stood up straight again, to listen a little nervously to the roaring of the gale among the treetops. "Supposing a tree fell down, Pooh, when we were underneath it?" "Supposing it didn't," said Pooh, after some careful thought. Piglet was comforted by this, and in a little while they were knocking and ringing very cheerfully at Owl's door. "Hello, Owl," said Pooh. "Oh, we're not too late for... I mean, how are you, Owl?" "Piglet and I just came to see you, how you were, because it's Thursday." "Sit down, Pooh. Sit down, Piglet," said Owl kindly. "Make yourselves comfortable." And they thanked him, and they made themselves as comfortable as they could. "Because you see, Owl," said Pooh, "we have been hurrying, so as to be in time for... so as to see you before we went away again." And Owl nodded solemnly. "Correct me if I am wrong," he said, "but am I right in supposing that it is a very blusterous day outside?" "Very," said Piglet, who was quietly thawing his ears and wishing that he was safely back in his own house. "I thought so," said Owl. "It was on just such a blusterous day as this that my Uncle Robert, a portrait of him, of whom you see on the wall on your right, Piglet, while returning in the late forenoon from a... What's that?" There was a loud cracking noise. "Look out!" cried Pooh. "Mind the clock! Out of the way, Piglet! Oh, Piglet, I'm falling on you!" "Help!" cried Piglet. Pooh's side of the room was slowly tilting upwards, and his chair began sliding down on Piglet's. The clock slithered gently along the mantelpiece, collecting vases on the way, until they all crashed together onto what had once been the floor, but was now trying to see what it looked like as a wall. Uncle Robert, who was going to be the new hearthrug and was bringing the rest of his wall with him as a carpet, met Piglet's chair, just as Piglet was expecting to leave it, and for a little while it became very difficult to remember which was really the north. And then there was another loud crack. Owl's room collected itself feverishly. And then there was silence. In a corner of the room, the tablecloth began to wiggle. And then it wrapped itself into a ball and rolled across the room. Then it jumped up and down once or twice, and then put out 2 ears. And it rolled across the room again and unwound itself. "Pooh," said Piglet nervously. "Yes," said one of the chairs. "Where are we?" "I am not quite sure," said the chair. Are we in Owl's house?" "I think so, because we were just going to have tea, and we hadn't had it." "Oh," said Piglet. "Well, did Owl always have a letterbox in his ceiling?" "Has he?" "Yes, look." "I can't," said Pooh. "I'm face downwards under something, and that, Piglet, is a very bad position for looking at ceilings." "Well, he has, Pooh." "Perhaps he has changed it," said Pooh, "just for a change." There was a disturbance behind the table in the other corner of the room, and Owl was with them again. "Ah, Piglet," said Owl, looking very much annoyed. "Where is Pooh?" "I am not quite sure," said Pooh. And Owl turned at his voice and frowned at as much of Pooh as he could see. "Pooh," said Owl severely, "did you do that?" "No," said Pooh humbly. "I don't think so." "Then who did?" I think it was the wind," said Piglet. I think your house has blown down." "Oh, is that it? I thought it was Pooh." "No," said Pooh. "Well, if it was the wind," said Owl, considering the matter, "then it wasn't Pooh's fault. No blame can be attached to him." And with these kind words, he flew up to look at his new ceiling. "Piglet!" called Pooh in a loud whisper, and Piglet leaned down to him. "Yes, Pooh?" "What did he say was attached to me?" "He said he didn't blame you." "Oh, I thought that he meant... Oh, well, I see." "Owl," said Piglet, "come down and help Pooh." And Owl, who was admiring his letterbox, flew down again, and together they pushed and pulled at the armchair. And in a little while, Pooh came out from underneath and was able to look around him again. "Well," said Owl, "this is a nice state of things." "Well, what are we going to do, Pooh? Can you think of anything?" asked Piglet. "Well, I had just thought of something," said Pooh. "It was just a little thing that I thought of." And he began to sing. "I lay on my chest and I thought it best to pretend I was having an evening rest. I lay on my tum and I tried to hum, but nothing particular seemed to come. My face was flat on the floor, and that is all very well for an acrobat. But it doesn't seem fair to a friendly bear, who stiffen him out with a basket chair, and a sort of squoze which grows and grows is not too nice for his poor old nose, and a sort of a squitch is much too much for his neck and his mouth and his ears and such. That was all, said Pooh. Owl coughed in an unadmiring sort of way, and said that if Pooh was sure that was all, they could now give their minds to the problem of escape. Because, said Owl, we can't go out by what used to be the front door, because something has fallen on it. But how else can you go out? Asked Piglet anxiously. Well, and as he cold fingers attempts to turn the page. Oh, that is the problem, Piglet, to which I am asking Pooh to give his mind. And Pooh sat on the floor, which had once been a wall, and gazed up at the ceiling, which had once been another wall, with a front door in it, which had once been a front door, and tried to give his mind to it. Could you fly up to the letterbox with Piglet on your back? He asked. No, said Piglet quickly. He couldn't. And Owl explained about necessary dorsal muscles. He'd explained this to Pooh and Christopher Robin once before, and had been waiting ever since for a chance to do it again, because it is a thing which you can easily explain twice before anybody knows what you are talking about. Because, you see, Owl, if we could get Piglet into the letterbox, he might squeeze through the place where the letters come, and climb down the tree and run for help. Piglet said hurriedly that he had been getting bigger lately, and couldn't possibly, much as he would like to. And Owl said that he had had his letterbox made bigger lately just in case he got bigger letters. So perhaps Piglet might. And Piglet said, but you said the necessary you-know-whats wouldn't. And Owl said, no, they won't. So it's no good thinking about it. And Piglet said, well, then we'd better think of something else. And he began to, at once. But Pooh's mind had gone back to the day when he had saved Piglet from the flood. And everybody had admired him so much. And as that did not often happen, he thought that he would like for it to happen again. And suddenly, just as it had come before, an idea came to him. Owl, said Pooh, I have thought of something. Oh, astute and helpful bear, said Owl. Pooh looked proud at being called a stout and helpful bear, and he said modestly that he just happened to think of it. You see, you tied a piece of string to Piglet, and you flew up to the letterbox with the other end in your beak, and you pushed it through the wire and brought it down to the floor. And you and Pooh pulled hard at this end, and Piglet went slowly up at the other end. And there you were. And there Piglet is, said Owl, if the string doesn't break. Supposing it does? Asked Piglet, really wanting to know. And then we try another piece of string. This was not very comforting to Piglet, because however many pieces of string they tried pulling up with, it would always be the same hymn coming down. But still, it did really seem the only thing to do. So with one last look back in his mind at all the happy hours that he had spent in the forest not being pulled up to the ceiling by a piece of string, Piglet nodded bravely at Pooh and said that it was a very clever plan. It won't break," whispered Pooh comfortingly, "because you are a small animal, and I will stand underneath. And if you save us all, it will be a very grand thing to talk about afterwards. And perhaps I will make up a song. And people will say, 'Oh, it was so grand what Piglet did, that a respectful Pooh song was made about it.'" And Piglet felt much better after this. And when everything was ready, and he found himself slowly going up to the ceiling, he was so proud that he would have called out, "Look at me!" if he hadn't been afraid that Pooh and Owl would let go of their end of the string to look at him. "Up we go," called Pooh cheerfully. "The ascent is proceeding as expected," said Owl, hopefully. Soon, it was over. Piglet opened the letterbox and climbed in. And then, having untied himself, he began to squeeze into the slit, through which, in the old days, when front doors were front doors, many an unexpected letter that WOL had written himself had come slipping. And he squeezed, and he squoze, and then, with one last squooze, he was out. Happily and excited, he turned round to squeak a last message to the prisoners. "It's all right," he called through the letterbox. "Your tree is blown right over, Owl, and there's a branch across the door. But Christopher Robin and I can move it, and we will bring a rope for Pooh, and I will go and tell him now. And I can climb down quite easily. I mean, it's dangerous, but I can do it all right. And Christopher Robin and I will be back in about half an hour. Goodbye, Pooh." And without waiting to hear Pooh's answering, "Goodbye, and thank you, Piglet," he was off. "Half an hour," said Owl, settling himself comfortably. "That will just give me time to finish that story that I was telling you about my Uncle Robert, a portrait of whom you see underneath you. Now, let me see. Where was I? Oh, yes. It was on just such a blusterous day as this that my Uncle Robert," Pooh, closed his eyes. And that is the end of the 8th chapter of The House at Pooh Corner. Thanks for joining us.